All right, team. So today I'm going to quickly run through pre-signing URLs for when you're using S3 on AWS, and then just showing how that plugs into Next and how you can use that with Prisma when defining your media models. So let's jump in. All right, so we're going to use our friend Next.js here. So let's just grab this and run it locally. We're going to do, let's go S3 presign demo, TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind, no, not right now, source directory, yes, app router, yeah, I'm gonna say no for this one. We don't want to import that. I'm just saying no to the app directory just because I'm not sure we're gonna run into any issues. So rather than take a gamble, I'm just gonna do what I know, just so we can get this through this quickly. In the meantime, I'm also going to open up the my 4x4 directory so I can grab some code from there instead of rewriting it all from scratch. All right, so we got that open, and then in here we're going to cd into S3 presign demo and open that up. All right, so there's going to be a few libraries we're going to need as well. So before we start in here, let's do grab our package. We're going to need all our AWS stuff. So we're going to need this. So let's go npm I this one. We're going to need the pre-signer. What else do we need? We need, let's see, anything else? S3 we don't need. API right now. That can be part of a different demo. Where else? What else do we need here? I think that's it for now. Let me just see. AWS, just those two libraries. Yep. All right, let's install those. Now, the concept behind this is with S3, you want to lock down your bucket. So there's no public access. So there's no way for anyone to grab files without you pre-authenticating that. So the way we do this is using pre-signed URLs. So we use our client ID and client secret to generate a pre-signed URL, which is basically a URL that has a very short window that can be used. It could be seconds or minutes, that allows the client to upload a file to that URL. So we define a specific URL where they're allowed to drop a file, and then that dies. Every time we want to look at that file, we either go through a CDN, which is very good for performance. So CDN reads from the bucket, and then we get URLs from there. Or you can generate, again, a pre-signed URL to read that file. So that's the idea behind it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we'll set up a new API URL here. So let me just pull that up. So I'm just going to jump into what I've done in my 4x4. So inside there, we've got source, pages, API, and I think in this one, we're doing it inside a TRPC. So something slightly different. So we've set up an AWS file here to do pre-signing. So we're going to do something different here. So I'm going to create a AWS route in our Next.js app here. And then let's just grab all this. All right, so currently this is just doing nothing. So if we open up, let's run this. So we're going to go npm run dev and grab this. All right, I might use Postman and just create a new file here. And this will be a post endpoint, but at the moment we're going to go API/AWS and a post because we're going to generate a URL or create something. So let's just see here. And then we're going to run that over here. Can probably get rid of this window because we're not going to have any UI at this stage. We're just going to hit send. So you can see at the moment, all that's happening is we're getting back this response, okay? So what we're going to do now, we probably want to call our AWS route here called presign. So let's just do this how we probably would do it in real life. So we're going to move that here, and we're going to call this presign like this. So it's a nested. And now we're going to just have to change our route here to AWS, API AWS presign. Cool, so still working, great. Okay, so what do we need inside here? So let's just walk through this. So we're going to get a few things. We're going to get a file key, file name, and a file type. Okay, so that's what we're expecting. And that's going to come from the request. So if we go, it's not the request query. Let's just do this. Let's go console.log request body and then just see what we're getting. So we'll run that here and then through Postman. So what we expect is we're going to submit a body, raw, JSON, and then we're going to send through these things. Okay, so the file name will be something like, let's if for example, if we were going to try presign a real file, I'll just grab one with a file name. So let's say we're uploading an image, all right? So our file name will be that. Our file type would be, I believe it's image/JPEG, and then the file key prefix. So this is if you wanted to store it at different places. Like, so in my 4x4, we can either store at images or we could store at attachments. But for now, we can actually leave that out. We don't need that. All right, so we're going to send this up. Now you can see here in our body that we are now getting that through. All right, so that comes through request body. So we can say const file name and file type is equal to request body. Okay, so we're just structuring that. So now what I can do again is I can just chuck that into the console and just double check that everything's all good. So let's send that again. Great. All right, so we're getting that through now. All right, so that gets us our data that we need. Okay, so that's the first part. Now, what we're going to do is generate the file key. And this, you don't really need to do anything special here. I've just done this in my 4x4 slightly differently, just because it allows us to, we change the ID of the file. So we change it to a UUID. You don't have to do this in general. You could just store it with the direct or the same file name that's used. So this will add a little bit of complexity which we don't need to do. So what we'll do now is we'll create the URL where we want to store this file on S3. Okay, so we need this pass URL. So that comes from here. All right, so we'll bring that in. So this is an import, so we're going to import that. So pass URL. And then so that you can see here, we need some variables in our environment. Okay, so we need our project S3 bucket and our S3 region, and then we pass through a file key. Okay, so the first thing to do is set these up. So let's go into, we need to create a new file here, and we're going to create .env.development. All right, and then we can just grab those two things. So we're going to have an S3 bucket name, and we're going to have an AWS region. So depending on where you are, you're going to set your region here. So let me just grab those, and I'll be right back. Okay, so what I've done, I've also added the access key and secret access key here, which you can fill in. So when you create an S3 bucket, I'm not going to walk through that because that is a little bit of a journey, but there are a lot of videos on YouTube to do that. So once you've set up your bucket and you've set your IAM credentials, you're going to get an access key and a secret access key. You're going to chuck those in there, and then you're going to give the name of your bucket and then and of your region. So I'm in Sydney, Australia, so I use Southeast 2. All right, so I'll let you do that, pop those in, and then jump back in. All right, and before continuing, make sure you restart your dev environment. This catches a lot of people. Cool, so we've got our bucket region. So what this is constructing is a URL for us. It looks something like, so if we just copied this, right, we're looking for something like this. So the first thing is the bucket. So this would be like my 4x4 development. And then this is going to be the AWS thing. So it's like Southeast, whatever, AP Southeast 2. Don't know. Right, so it's constructing this URL for us. And then it's going to give us a file key. So this is the path to your file. So for us, like we would do development / images / file name. Now you can set up the storage however you want to. And this is where the original files will be stored, right? So we need to generate this key here, okay? So this is what this thing does for us, right? So we're just going to do that in line here. And we're going to go file key is equal to, and we're going to say images / file name, right? Very simple. Because we want to, or I mean, in any case, you could also do like assets, right? So if you're mixing images and video and PDF or whatever you need it to do. So let's do that. That's the file key. Now that file key gets dropped in here. All right. So let's log this out now and see what we're getting. All right. So we'll pull up our terminal and we'll pull up this and send it. Okay. Can't find pass URL. I wonder if we have to add that in explicitly now. So let's just grab that and install it. Okay, that's installed. Let's run dev again, and let's run this and see if it works. There we go. Okay, so you can see here, what's our S3 object URL look like? Host name, port, protocol, path, and the query string. So you can see here's the path where we're going to upload this file to. Okay, cool. So that's working. So we've pre-signed that piece. Not pre-signed, but we've built the URL. And now we're going to use set up the pre-signer. Okay, so this is where we're going to go and now actually build up the credentials that we're going to use, the region, and then we're going to use the hash that we're going to use is going to be a SHA-256 hash. So let's grab this. So we need to fetch this package as well. So npm I hash node. Let's also just grab the rest of these while we're here. The util format URL. Grab that as well. Is there anything else? We probably need this one as well. So we got the presigner, got the parser. Great. Let's install those guys so we don't have to keep stopping. I can keep talking through this. Okay, so npm run dev. Let's go. Sweet. So we need to import hash. Let's go. All right, that's there. And we need this S3 request presigner. Let's grab that. All right, so you can see the few little libraries we need to actually do this. All right, now we have defined our options, set up a presigner, and then from there, we're going to make a GET request to AWS. And so we need to turn this function into an async. Okay. We need to import this HTTP request. So this is a library we're using to actually make the request to S3. And now we're going to pass through the object URL, which we created up here. And then we're going to say we need a put method with the presigner we've set up here. And there's the expiry, right? So that's how long we can determine how long we want this to be. Obviously shorter, more secure. Harder to break. But you also don't want it to be too short where the user can't actually upload the file. All right, so let's go here and now you can see we'll output this now instead. And let's run this and hopefully we get success. So we send that. Here we go. So we've got a request back from AWS. We're going to use the method put. There's the host name, there's the port, here's the query. So here's all the things that we're going to getting from AWS, all the credentials, the headers, the path. So it's all there. So these query params will be appended to our URL when we upload. So we pass all of these things through to AWS, and here's a credential and a signature that AWS is going to use to verify that this request is okay. All right, so from there, you can see here, we've got this little method here. So we're going to get the two important pieces for this is the method and the URL. All right. So when you're building a pre-signer, what you want to return now is we would return, so our result, right, would be these two things. Okay. So we need this format URL piece. All right, so we chuck that in. Now what I want to do again, I mean, we probably don't have to console log now because we can just return this result. So we're going to return JSON 200. And that's just going to say is not assigned with type of data. Oh, it's because data is defined upstairs there. Okay. We don't care about that. Right now, we're just going to say method and also URL. Just so we can type this. Great, that's gone. All right, let's see what we get. Hit send. Boom. All right. So let's see. Let me just drop this into the VS Code so we can see it nicely. So what you can see here, we're going to get back a method. So when you're uploading, it wants you to use put. Then it's going to give you this URL, right? You can see that it's going to assets. It's going to the file. This is the file path where we're going to upload to. And then here's all the stuff AWS needs to actually upload this, right? So you can see all of this stuff here. It's going to use that to actually let you upload. So you use something like what we do is API. We use API so that we can use the API S3 plugin. And then API will upload directly into, we just supply this URL, the signed request. It will then upload to that path and the file will be put there securely. And then no one can actually publicly read that. So what we're doing here is we're blocking public rights. But we allowed it if you generate a pre-signed URL, okay? So that's how we actually upload files to S3. Now, I also had a question about how we could set this up in Prisma. Like how would you model attachments in Prisma? So I'll jump in and I'll keep going and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, to get started in a blank Next project, we're gonna need to install Prisma. So let's do that. So we'll quickly jump this. Usually I just use T3 stack to have it all installed, but let's try and do it from scratch. So we'll install that, Prisma CLI. Okay, this Prisma schema, all right. So let's set that up for us. Prisma schema. This is all I want right now. So what we would do here, right? So it depends on the model, what you want, where you want to store your asset. But let's create an asset model, right? And then we're going to just do ID string, cool, yep, do CUID, blah, blah, blah. Now we are going to, you can have it assigned to the user who uploaded it. But for simplicity, let's leave that off. And I'm just going to jump into my 4x4 just to show you how we've done this here. It's just way faster than trying to come up with it. So it's an attachment, right? So we've got, this is what we're using. So I'm going to use the same thing. All right, don't need that. So you can store the file extension. The file key is the key to the file. So I'll show you what that looks like once you actually create it. The file key is here. It's like basically the path, right? So file key looks like this. That's the file key. So we need that file name. File extension is optional. You don't really need that. If you're changing the file name like we do, we change it to an MD5. We store the original file name, but if you're not doing that, you don't need this. We store the user who uploaded it, right? So you'd have to have model user, right? Whatever. Don't need this. Right? If you had one. Title of the asset you wouldn't have. You don't need a description. If you were using images, I would suggest having a width and a height column so that it's easy to pull that out of the DB. You don't have to like check, and if you're going to try and position an image in a certain way, if you want to work out if it's portrait or landscape, you could use those variables. What's this guy saying to us? And then this is how you do this. Now, let's say we wanted to use this asset, and this would be called assets. Prisma format or add it manually. The relation field user on asset is missing the opposite relation. Okay, yeah, fair enough. So basically what this just saying is has many assets. Yeah, that's it. Not sure why it's not adding that for us automatically, but anyway, there we go. So now if we were to say we had let's call it a post, right? You're going to have a post, which is like a blog post. Okay, we're going to set that up. Now you wanted to have the ability to have a post have many assets, right? So you wanted to, let's say you wanted to upload images to that. You would set up something like posts asset model. Now that's a join table between the post and the asset, okay? And then to do that, so what we're going to do here is going to have an asset ID and a post ID. And that's it there. So what is this guy saying? It's just not having the opposite. So we just need to do that. So an asset has many posts, assets, and then the same thing here has post assets, right? And then the user, and a user can have many posts. That's just what's going on here. Should auto add that? I don't know why it's not. All right. So I'm going to get rid of this. This is what your schema would look like, right? And that's how you join your asset to this entity that you want it to belong to. And this way you can have one asset table. And keep in mind, you can rename this images if all you wanted to do was upload images. You could just have that as called image model, right? But an asset or an attachment is actually a bit more flexible because you could store any type of asset. And then your entity just joins through that. And by doing this, it makes it very clean by just having this. Otherwise, you're going to have to create post asset, and all of these things are going to be duplicates. You're going to have all of these going on and on every time, right? And then you're like, oh no, I want to store a new property on my asset. You're going to have to add it to all of these tables. So by doing a join table, it's much simpler. In Rails world, we would make this polymorphic, and we'd just have like an owner. So usually what I would do in Rails, I would just say owner type is a string, and then I'd have owner ID, and that's it. And that would be a whatever. If you're using strings for, that would be like that, or it'd be an integer, a big int. And that's but Prisma doesn't support polymorphic, so we can't do that easily. But that's another way of doing it as well, okay? So hopefully that answers a few questions. I've shown you how to do pre-signing of URL, so that means that the client doesn't need to know your secret and your, so it's what's the secret key and your access key. So you don't need to pass those through, because someone asked me that a while ago. How do you do this securely? And this is how you do it securely. Use the pre-signing, where you can now make a request from your front end to generate this URL, and we're not passing through any secret credentials, so the front end is safe. That then uploads to your S3 bucket, and then you only read through your S3 bucket either by getting a pre-signed URL or using a CDN, which is what I would use. Something like we use in my 4x4 is image kit, and we give the image kit access to the bucket, and then image kit reads those pictures, and we can then supply, like, we want this image at width 200 by 200. It will compress the image or resize it and then cache it and then serve it. And that's very efficient, all right? So if anyone has any other questions regarding storage of assets in S3 or how we do it, please have a look at this. Maybe I can upload this code. I'm not sure it's going to be working though, or very useful, but I will upload it to a repo. And then also check out my 4x4, because we do all of this kind of stuff in there as well. Cool. Hopefully that was helpful, guys. Thanks for tuning in.